My name is Elias Vance, and I am a xeno-botanist. That means I study alien plants. It is not glamorous work. It does not involve blasters, space battles, or daring rescues. It involves dirt, microscopes, and a lot of paperwork. I had spent the last 3 years on Xylos Prime, studying a species of phosphorescent moss that only grew in the shadow of the crystal spires. It was quiet work, peaceful work, the kind of work that attracts people who find other people exhausting. So when a summons arrived, I assumed it was a mistake. The message was delivered by a drone that hummed into my greenhouse and projected a holographic seal I didn't recognize. The seal was elaborate, interlocking crystals surrounding what looked like a royal crest. My translator took a full 3 seconds to process it. Summons to the Imperial Palace. Attendance mandatory. Present yourself within 1 standard rotation. By order of the Crown. I read it 3 times. Then I called my supervisor. Did you get one of these? I asked. Dr. Yelena Kaur, my department head, looked tired. She always looked tired, but today she looked exhausted. Everyone got one, Elias. The entire research division. All diplomatic staff. Anyone with human contact in the last 6 months. What's going on? She hesitated. The princess. She's asked to meet humans. I waited for more. None came. That's it? She wants to meet us? Why the formal summons? Because she's the princess. Because no one says no to the imperial family. Because Yelena stopped herself, rubbing her temples. Just go, Elias. Wear something clean. Don't touch anything. And for the love of all the stars, don't make eye contact unless she speaks to you first. The transmission ended. I looked around my greenhouse. The moss glowed softly. A watering drone beeped at me, asking for instructions. It all felt very small and very far away from an imperial palace. I had no idea how much my life was about to change. Part 2. The Crystal Palace. The Imperial Palace was not a building. It was a city. I rode a maglev train for 2 hours just to reach the outer gates. The palace complex sprawled across 100 square kilometers of prime real estate in the capital, a glittering maze of crystalline towers, floating gardens, and plazas large enough to land starships. At the gates, I was scanned, probed, questioned, and scanned again. My credentials were verified by 3 different departments. My plant samples were confiscated for analysis. I was given a data slate with a list of rules so long it could have been a novel. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not approach the royal family. Do not touch any surface without permission. Do not look directly at the Empress. Do not. I stopped reading. My head hurt. A guide drone led me through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Xylosians passed me in flowing robes, their crystalline forms catching the light. They didn't look at me. They didn't acknowledge me. I was furniture. Finally, I was deposited in a waiting chamber with about 50 other humans. I recognized a few faces, diplomats from the embassy, a trade negotiator I'd met once at a boring party, a handful of researchers from other departments. Everyone looked as confused and uncomfortable as I felt. What's this about? I whispered to the woman next to me. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd been up all night worrying. No one knows. The princess requested to meet humans. That's all they'll say. The princess? Which one? The heir. Princess Alystra. I blinked. The heir. The future empress of the entire Xylosian Dominion. The most powerful being in this sector of the galaxy, next to the Empress herself. Why would she want to meet us? The woman shrugged. Maybe she's writing a report. Maybe she's curious. Maybe she's bored. Royalty does whatever they want. Before I could ask more, The doors at the far end of the chamber slid open. A Xylosian official in elaborate robes gestured for us to follow. It was time. Part 3. The Throne Room. The throne room of the Xylosian Dominion was designed to make you feel small. It worked. The ceiling vanished into darkness, so high I couldn't see it. Pillars of crystal, each one the size of a redwood tree, lined the walls. The floor was polished obsidian, so reflective that I could see my own nervous face staring back at me. And at the far end, on a raised dais, sat the Empress. She was magnificent and terrifying. Her crystalline form was larger than any Xylosian I'd seen, her facets catching light from 1,000 hidden sources. She wore a crown of frozen energy that crackled softly. Her eyes, if you could call them eyes, were twin points of white fire. Beside her, on a slightly smaller throne, sat the princess. Princess Alystra was younger. Her crystal was a softer shade, more blue than purple, and her form was more delicate. She sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the floor. She looked sad. That was the only word for it. She looked profoundly, achingly sad. We humans were arranged in a line before the throne. A Xylosian herald read a proclamation in their harmonic language, and our translators struggled to keep up. Something about diplomatic relations. Something about cultural exchange. Something about the princess's interest in Terran customs. Then the herald said something that made every human in the room freeze. The princess will now select an individual for personal audience. Select? Personal audience? The princess raised her head. Her star-bright eyes swept across the line of humans. She looked at the diplomats, the negotiators, the important people with important titles. Her gaze passed over them without pause. Then she looked at me. I don't know why. I was at the end of the line, half hidden behind a taller trade delegate. I was wearing my second-best shirt because my best one had a stain. I had dirt under my fingernails from the greenhouse. I was no one. But she looked at me, and her eyes widened slightly. She raised one crystalline hand and pointed. Him. Part 4. The Garden. The chamber where I was led was not a throne room. It was a garden. It was small by palace standards, maybe the size of a tennis court, but it was filled with plants I'd never seen before. Glowing vines hung from the ceiling. Flowers that pulsed with soft light bloomed in carefully arranged beds. A small fountain trickled in the corner, the water seeming to flow upward before falling. Princess Alystra waited on a bench near the fountain. She looked smaller here, away from the throne. More fragile. I bowed, remembered I was supposed to bow, and hoped it was deep enough. Please sit, she said. Her voice was soft. The translation came through my implant as a gentle melody. I sat on the bench, leaving as much distance as I politely could. You are a botanist, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Your Highness. A xeno-botanist. I study plants. I know what a botanist does. A pause. I asked for you specifically. My heart skipped. You did? Why? She looked at the garden. I have been watching the human delegation for 6 months. From a distance. Through recordings. I have seen diplomats negotiate. I have seen traders bargain. I have seen researchers present their findings. She turned to look at me. You are the only one who smiles at the plants. I had no response to that. It was true. I did smile at plants. They were easier than people. The gardeners here, she continued, they maintain. They prune. They arrange. But they do not connect. They see the plants as decoration. You see them as companions? More like colleagues, I said. We're working together. I help them grow. They help me understand them. She nodded slowly. That is what I thought. Another pause. The fountain bubbled upward. Your Highness, I said carefully, may I ask why you wanted to meet a human? Personally, I mean. The others are more important. She made a sound, soft, crystalline. It took me a moment to realize it was laughter. Important, she repeated. Everyone in that room thinks they are important. They carry titles and credentials and lists of achievements. They want to impress me. They want favors. They want access.
She looked at me.
You wanted to go back to your greenhouse. I couldn't deny it. I'm not good with people, Your Highness. Plants are simpler. Plants do not want anything from you. Exactly. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that broke my heart. No one here wants anything from me either. Because no one here sees me. They see the crown. They see the throne. They see the future Empress. But they do not see the person inside. I looked at her, really looked at her. Behind the crystal, behind the royalty, behind the impossible beauty, I saw a young woman who was profoundly, desperately lonely. That sounds... I searched for the right word. That sounds unbearable. It is my duty. Duty doesn't have to mean isolation. She looked at me sharply. What do you know of isolation? You are surrounded by your own kind. You can touch each other. You can, she stopped herself, her crystals dimming. Forgive me. That was unfair. No, I said. It was honest. I prefer honest. We sat in silence for a while. The garden hummed around us.
Part 5. The Request.
I visited the princess 7 more times over the next 2 weeks. Each visit was in the garden. Each visit, we talked. She asked about Earth, about humans, about the strange customs she'd observed. I asked about her life, her duties, the weight of carrying an empire on your shoulders before you were ready. She told me about her mother, the Empress, who loved her but could not show it, about the courtiers who smiled to her face and plotted behind her back, about the endless ceremonies, the endless expectations, the endless loneliness. I told her about my greenhouse, about the moss that glowed brighter when I played music, about the time a watering drone malfunctioned and flooded my lab, about my complete inability to navigate social situations.
She laughed at that.
A real laugh, not the polite sound she made in public. You are the strangest human I have ever met, she said. I'm the only human you've ever met. Exactly. On the 8th visit, she was different. Nervous. Her crystals flickered with an emotion I couldn't read. There is something I wish to ask you, she said. Anything. She stood, walked to the fountain, and turned back to face me. Her expression, if crystals could have expressions, was vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. Among humans, when two beings share a deep connection, when one has brought light to the other's darkness, there's a gesture, a physical gesture. I nodded slowly. You mean a hug?
Yes.
A hug. She said the word carefully, as if tasting it. I have studied it. It is when two beings wrap their arms around each other. It is a sign of trust, of affection, of safety. It is, I agreed. I have never been touched. Her voice was barely a whisper. In my entire life, no one may touch the royal family. It is forbidden. A matter of security, of protocol, of tradition. My mother has never held me. No one has ever held me. I stood. My heart was pounding. Your Highness. Please. She took a step toward me. I know it is forbidden. I know it could cause a scandal. I know the court would be outraged. But you leave tomorrow. Your assignment ends. I may never see you again. And I cannot, her voice cracked. I cannot go another 1,000 years without knowing what it feels like to be held.
She was close now.
Close enough that I could feel the warmth of her crystal form, the soft hum of her energy. Just once, she whispered. Please. Part 6. The Embrace. I should have said no. I should have cited protocol. I should have explained the diplomatic consequences. I should have been sensible and professional and walked away. Instead, I opened my arms. She stepped forward, and I wrapped my arms around her. Her crystal form was warm, warmer than I expected, and surprisingly smooth. She was taller than me, so my head rested against her chest, where a heart would be if she had won. For a moment, nothing happened. She was rigid, uncertain, as if she didn't know how to respond. Then her arms, slender, crystalline, beautiful, wrapped around me. She pulled me close, and she began to shake. It took me a moment to realize she was crying, or the Xylosian equivalent of crying. Soft sobs that manifested as ripples of light across her surface. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you. Thank you." We stood like that for a long time. The garden hummed. The fountain bubbled upward. And a princess who had never been held finally knew what it felt like to be safe. I didn't hear the door open. I didn't hear the gasps. But I felt the moment when the garden went absolutely silent. I turned my head, still holding the princess, because I wasn't about to let go while she was crying, and saw them. Courtiers.
Dozens of them.
Officials in elaborate robes. Guards with weapons half raised. And at the center, the Empress herself, her star-bright eyes wide with an expression I couldn't read. The palace had frozen in shock. Part 7. The Reckoning. No one moved. The Empress stared at me. She stared at her daughter, wrapped in the arms of a human. She stared at the embrace that had broken 3,000 years of tradition. Then she spoke. "Release her." Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. I let go immediately, stepping back, my hands raised in what I hoped was a non-threatening gesture. Princess Alystra turned to face her mother. Her crystals were bright, defiant. "I asked him to," she said. "He did nothing wrong." The Empress's gaze shifted to me. I felt like an insect under a microscope. "You touched the heir to the throne." "Yes, Your Majesty." "You know this is forbidden." "Yes, Your Majesty." "And yet you did it anyway." I took a breath. I was probably going to be executed. Might as well be honest. "Your Majesty, your daughter asked me for something she has never had. Something no one in this palace has ever given her. She asked to be held. Just once." And I swallowed. I couldn't say no to that. "I'm sorry if that offends your laws. But I'm not sorry I did it." The silence stretched. I could hear my own heartbeat. Then the Empress did something no one expected. She laughed. It was a small sound, surprised, almost wonder, but it was unmistakably laughter. The courtiers stared. The guards lowered their weapons. Princess Alystra's crystals flickered with confusion. 3,000 years, the Empress said softly. 3,000 years of isolation. 3,000 years of tradition. 3,000 years of watching my daughter sit alone, knowing she would inherit the same loneliness I did. She looked at me, and a human botanist with dirt under his nails solves it in 2 weeks by simply caring. She stepped forward. The courtiers scrambled to get out of her way. "You held my daughter," she said. "You gave her something I could not. Something our laws forbade me from giving." She stopped before me, close enough that I felt the heat of her power. "Do you know what that makes you?" I shook my head. I couldn't speak. "It makes you family." Epilogue. The embrace that changed everything. I did not return to my greenhouse. The Empress decreed that the laws regarding physical contact with the royal family would be re-evaluated. A polite way of saying they were being completely rewritten. A council of scholars, physicians, and, strangely, human psychologists was formed to study the effects of touch deprivation on Xylosian development. I was appointed as a special advisor. My official title was Liaison for Cultural Exchange, but everyone knew what it really meant. I was the human who held the princess. And I held her again. Many times. We walked in the garden. We talked about plants. We sat together in silence. And sometimes, when the weight of her future grew too heavy, she would lean against me, and I would wrap my arms around her, and she would be safe. The court got used to it. Eventually, they barely noticed. Other humans arrived, diplomats, researchers, traders, and some of them formed connections too. The palace that had been frozen for 3,000 years began to thaw. But it started with one moment, one embrace, one human who couldn't say no to a lonely girl. The palace froze in shock when the alien princess hugged me. But what they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was that I was the one who had been given the gift. Because in a galaxy full of wonders, there is nothing more precious than being trusted. Nothing more valuable than being safe. Nothing more human than holding someone who has never been held. And somewhere in the Crystal Palace, a princess who had been alone for 100 years finally knew what it felt like to have a friend.